General Hospital will reveal. In recent days, the atmosphere in Port Charles has become more tense than ever as the shocking secret about Natalia's past is gradually revealed. Natalia appeared in this town with an elegant, confident, and mysterious demeanor, quickly becoming a notable figure in the community. No one could have guessed that behind that perfect exterior lay a dark past involving Jen Sidwell, a name that makes many shudder when mentioned. Sidwell is not just an ordinary criminal but a notorious diamond smuggler who has caused no small amount of trouble for both Anna and Sonny in the past. The relationship between Natalia and Sidwell was confirmed when they accidentally met in a parking lot late one evening. The moment Sidwell saw Natalia smoking, he remarked that she had given up this habit long ago, and Natalia's response, that she quit when she escaped from him, revealed something about the tense relationship between them in the past. Natalia had been meticulously crafting a new identity for herself in Port Charles, a stark contrast to her tumultuous past. Her position at Deception, a prestigious cosmetics company, provided her with a sense of normalcy and purpose she had long craved. Each day, she immersed herself in the world of beauty and fashion, finding solace in the mundane tasks of marketing strategies and product launches. Her colleagues, particularly Lucy Coe and Maxie Jones, had become more than just co-workers. They were slowly becoming friends, offering Natalia glimpses of the genuine connections she had been denied for so long. But it was her burgeoning relationship with Sonny Corinthos that truly anchored Natalia to Port Charles. Their encounters began as casual run-ins at Kelly's diner, evolving into shared moments at the docks, where they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. Sonny's charisma and complexity intrigued Natalia, while her mystery and resilience captivated him. As their bond deepened, Natalia found herself opening up in ways she hadn't dared to in years, sharing carefully edited versions of her past that hinted at hardship without revealing the full extent of her secrets. However, the fragile peace Natalia had constructed came crashing down with Sidwell's unexpected appearance in town. His presence was like a ghost from her past, haunting her every move. She first spotted him at the Metro Court, his eyes locking with hers across the crowded restaurant. The shock of seeing him nearly caused her to drop the glass of wine she was holding, drawing concerned looks from her dinner companions. Sidwell wasted no time in making his intentions clear. He cornered Natalia in the parking garage of her apartment building, his voice a menacing whisper as he laid out his demands. "Our little secret stays buried, or I'll make sure everyone in this quaint town knows exactly who you are," he threatened, his fingers digging into her arm. The threat was clear. Keep quiet about their past, or face the consequences. The pressure of maintaining her facade while constantly looking over her shoulder began to take its toll on Natalia. She found herself jumping at shadows, her nerves frayed by the constant fear of exposure. Her work at Deception suffered as she struggled to concentrate, making careless mistakes that drew questioning looks from her colleagues. Nights became a torment of restless sleep and vivid nightmares, where she relived the darkest moments of her life with Sidwell. As the days passed, Natalia's internal struggle intensified. The weight of her secret felt like a physical burden, pressing down on her chest and making it difficult to breathe. She found herself withdrawing from the relationships she had worked so hard to build, canceling plans with friends and making excuses to avoid spending time with Sonny. The guilt of her deception gnawed at her, especially when she saw the hurt and confusion in Sonny's eyes at her sudden distance. One particularly sleepless night, Natalia sat on the balcony of her apartment, staring out at the twinkling lights of Port Charles. She replayed every moment of her time in the city, from her first day at Deception to her most recent conversation with Sonny. The thought of losing it all, the job she loved, the friends she had made, and most importantly, the possibility of a future with Sonny, was almost unbearable. Yet, as dawn broke over the horizon, Natalia realized that the alternative, living in constant fear of Sidwell and his threats, was equally unthinkable. She had spent years running from her past, changing identities and starting over in new cities. Port Charles was the first place that had felt like home in a long time, and the thought of running again filled her with a deep sense of despair. Moreover, her growing feelings for Sonny complicated matters further. Their relationship had progressed from friendship to something deeper, with unspoken promises of a future together. Natalia knew that Sonny had his own complicated past and secrets, which made her hesitant to judge him. But she also knew that trust was paramount to Sonny, and her deception could potentially destroy any chance of a real relationship between them. The decision to confess weighed heavily on Natalia's mind. She spent days agonizing over the potential outcomes, imagining scenarios where her revelation led to rejection and ostracism. In her darkest moments, she even considered leaving Port Charles in the dead of night, disappearing once again to protect herself and those she had grown to care for. But as she stood in front of her mirror one morning, preparing for another day of pretense, Natalia caught sight of the fear in her own eyes. It was a look she recognized from her years with Sidwell, the look of a woman trapped by her own secrets. In that moment, she made her decision. She would tell Sonny the truth, consequences be damned. The relief of that decision was immediate, like a weight lifting from her shoulders. With trembling hands, Natalia reached for her phone to text Sonny, asking to meet. As she hit send, she knew that whatever happened next would change the course of her life in Port Charles forever. The truth was a ticking time bomb, and Natalia had just lit the fuse. On a particularly tempestuous evening in Port Charles, the rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the windows and creating rivers along the gutters of the city streets. The storm had rolled in unexpectedly, much like the turmoil that had engulfed Natalia's life since Sidwell's appearance. After days of internal debate and sleepless nights, she had finally made her decision. Tonight would be the night she would reveal everything to Sonny. The journey to Sonny's penthouse was fraught with both literal and metaphorical obstacles. Natalia had forgotten her umbrella in her haste to leave her apartment, and by the time she hailed a taxi, her elegant silk blouse and tailored pants were already damp. The taxi driver had taken a wrong turn, adding precious minutes to her journey, minutes during which Natalia nearly lost her nerve and asked to be taken back home. But the memory of Sidwell's threatening presence kept her resolve firm. By the time she arrived at Harborview Towers, where Sonny's penthouse occupied the top floor, Natalia was soaked to the skin. Her carefully applied makeup had begun to run, and her usually immaculate hair clung to her face in wet tendrils. In the elevator, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored walls and barely recognized the woman staring back at her, vulnerable, frightened, a far cry from the composed professional she presented to the world. The walk down the hallway to Sonny's door felt interminable. Each step was heavier than the last, as if her body was physically resisting the confrontation to come. When she finally reached his door, Natalia stood frozen for several long moments, her hand raised to knock but unable to complete the motion. The sound of thunder crashing outside startled her into action, and before she could reconsider, her knuckles rapped against the solid wood. The seconds that followed stretched into what felt like hours. Natalia could hear movement inside, the soft padding of footsteps approaching, the click of a lock being turned. And then the door swung open, revealing Sonny Corinthos, dressed casually in a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a stark contrast to his usual formal attire. Sonny's expression shifted from mild curiosity to concern as he took in Natalia's bedraggled appearance. His dark eyes, usually guarded and calculating, softened with genuine worry. "Natalia?" he questioned, his voice a mixture of surprise and concern. "What happened to you?" Natalia opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, a small, involuntary sob escaped her lips, and she wrapped her arms around herself in a futile attempt to stop the trembling that had overtaken her body, trembling not just from the cold rain that had soaked through her clothes, but from the fear of what was to come. Without hesitation, Sonny reached out and gently pulled her inside, closing the door behind them. The warmth of the penthouse enveloped Natalia immediately, a stark contrast to the chill that had settled in her bones. The space was exactly as she remembered from her previous visits, elegantly furnished with rich, dark woods and leather, the walls adorned with tasteful artwork. A fire crackled in the large stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. "You're freezing," Sonny observed, his hand still on her arm, feeling the cold dampness of her skin through her blouse. With the efficiency of a man accustomed to taking charge, he disappeared briefly into an adjoining room, returning moments later with a plush towel and what appeared to be one of his own sweaters. "Here," he said, handing them to her. "The bathroom's through there if you want to change." Natalia accepted the items with a murmured thanks, grateful for the moment of reprieve. In the privacy of Sonny's luxurious bathroom, she peeled off her wet blouse and dried herself with the towel, which smelled faintly of Sonny's cologne, a scent that had become familiar and comforting to her over the past months. She pulled on his sweater, which was far too large for her petite frame but wonderfully warm and dry. The simple act of changing into dry clothes helped restore a small measure of her composure, though her heart still raced at the thought of the conversation to come. When she emerged from the bathroom, Sonny was waiting with a crystal tumbler filled with amber liquid. "Whiskey," he explained, holding it out to her. "It'll help warm you up." Natalia accepted the glass, their fingers brushing momentarily in the exchange. The brief contact sent a jolt through her, a reminder of the connection they had built, a connection she was about to put at risk. She took a small sip of the whiskey, wincing slightly at the burn as it traveled down her throat, but welcoming the warmth that spread through her chest. Sonny gestured toward the plush leather sofa positioned in front of the fireplace. "Sit," he said, his tone gentle but leaving no room for argument. "Whatever brought you here in this state can wait until you're warm and dry." Natalia sank onto the sofa, grateful for its comfort after her tense journey. Sonny settled into an armchair opposite her, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert, watching her with the careful attention he afforded to everything in his life. The crackling of the fire filled the silence between them, the dancing flames reflecting in the crystal of Natalia's glass as she stared into it, gathering her courage. After several long moments, Sonny broke the silence. "You want to tell me what's going on?" he asked, his voice low and even. "I've never seen you like this, Natalia." Natalia raised her eyes to meet his, finding concern and curiosity in his gaze. She took another sip of whiskey, larger this time, drawing strength from its liquid courage. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something about my past, something I should have told you a long time ago." Sonny leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening," he said simply. Natalia's gaze drifted to the fireplace, finding it easier to speak to the flames than to face Sonny's reaction. "Before I came to Port Charles, before I was even Natalia Ramirez. I was someone else," she began, her voice growing steadier as the words began to flow. "I was Elena Vasquez, a 22-year-old girl from a small town in Arizona, working as a cocktail waitress in Las Vegas, dreaming of a better life." She paused, taking another sip of whiskey, feeling its warmth spread through her, loosening the knot of tension in her chest. "That's where I met him, Jen Sidwell. He was charming, sophisticated, wealthy beyond anything I'd ever known. He would come to the club where I worked, always requesting to be seated in my section. He left extravagant tips, brought me expensive gifts, made me feel special in a way no one ever had before." Natalia's eyes remained fixed on the dancing flames as she continued, her voice taking on a distant quality as she revisited memories long suppressed. "He courted me like something out of a fairy tale, private jets to exotic locations for dinner, shopping sprees and boutiques where the staff treated me like royalty because I was with him. I was young, naive, dazzled by it all. When he proposed after just 3 months, I said yes without hesitation." She risked a glance at Sonny, finding his expression unreadable, his dark eyes intent on her face. Drawing a deep breath, she continued. "The first year was magical. We lived in a mansion in Monaco, traveled the world, attended glamorous parties with people whose names I'd only ever read in magazines. I thought I was living a dream." Her voice hardened slightly as she went on. "But then things began to change. Jens would disappear for days at a time on business trips. He became secretive, taking phone calls in private, having hushed conversations with men I'd never seen before. When I asked questions, he would brush me off, tell me not to worry my pretty little head about business matters." Natalia's fingers tightened around the crystal tumbler as the memories flooded back. "One night, I overheard a conversation, Jens discussing a shipment of diamonds from Sierra Leone. I didn't understand everything, but I knew enough to realize these weren't legal transactions. When I confronted him, She paused, swallowing hard. He showed me a side of himself I'd never seen before. He didn't hit me, not then, but the threat was there in his eyes, in the way he gripped my arms so tightly they bruised. The fire popped loudly, making Natalia jump slightly. She steadied herself with another sip of whiskey before continuing. After that night, everything changed. Jens kept me under constant surveillance, a driver who was really a bodyguard, staff who reported my every move. I realized I wasn't his wife, I was his possession, another trophy to display at parties, another asset to control. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. It took me nearly a year to gather the courage to leave. I planned meticulously, saving small amounts of cash, obtaining a fake passport through a sympathetic household staff member. I fled in the middle of the night with nothing but a small bag and the clothes on my back. Natalia's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she recounted the next chapter of her story. But Jens wasn't a man who accepted loss. He sent people after me, professional trackers. I changed my name, my appearance, moved from city to city. For a while, I thought I'd lost them. I settled in Chicago as Maria Torres, got a job as a receptionist at a law firm, even made a few friends. Then one day, I saw one of Jen's men watching my apartment building. I had to run again. She looked directly at Sonny now, her gaze steady despite the emotion in her voice. This happened 3 more times over the next 5 years. Each time I built a new life, each time they found me, each time I had to disappear again. Port Charles was supposed to be different. I'd been careful, covered my tracks better than ever before. And for a while, it worked. I became Natalia Ramirez, got the job at Deception, met you. Her voice softened on the last words, a hint of the feelings she'd developed for him seeping through. And then? Sonny prompted gently when she fell silent, his voice betraying nothing of his thoughts. And then Jens showed up in Port Charles, Natalia said, her voice regaining its strength. I saw him at the Metro Court last week. He made it clear that he knows exactly who I am, where I live, where I work. He threatened to expose my past to everyone in Port Charles if I don't keep quiet about our connection. When she finished speaking, the only sound in the room was the crackling of the fire and the faint patter of rain against the windows. Natalia felt drained, as if the act of telling her story had physically exhausted her. She stared into the depths of her whiskey glass, unable to look at Sonny, terrified of what she might see in his eyes, disgust, disappointment, or worst of all, pity. The silence stretched on, becoming almost unbearable. Natalia could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat seeming to echo in the quiet room. She had laid herself bare, revealed the truth she had hidden for so long, and now she waited for judgment. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Sonny shifted in his chair. Natalia braced herself, still unable to meet his gaze. She heard the soft clink of his glass being set down on the coffee table, the rustle of fabric as he leaned forward. Natalia, he said, his voice low and controlled, revealing nothing of his thoughts. Look at me. Slowly, reluctantly, she raised her eyes to meet his. Instead of the rejection or disgust she had feared, she found his expression intense but unreadable, his dark eyes searching her face as if looking for something beyond her words. Is there anything else, he asked, his tone measured. Any other connection to Sidwell that I should know about? Are you still in contact with him in any way? And you're coming to Port Charles, was that truly a coincidence, or was there another reason? The questions were direct, almost clinical in their precision, and Natalia understood their purpose. Sonny was not just a man concerned about a woman he cared for. He was also a businessman with enemies, a man who had built an empire on caution and control. He needed to assess the threat, to understand all the variables. No, there's nothing else, Natalia answered, her voice steady now. I haven't had any contact with Jens since I left him, except for the encounter at the Metro Court. And yes, coming to Port Charles was a coincidence. I chose it because it seemed small enough to disappear in but large enough to find work. I had no idea Jens had any connections here until he showed up. She set her glass down on the coffee table, her hands now steady. I swear to you, Sonny, I never meant to bring this danger to your door. If I had known Jens would follow me here, I would have gone somewhere else. But now that he's here, I'm afraid he's not just after me. The way he spoke about Port Charles, about the opportunities here. I think he may have other plans, possibly involving you or your business interests. Sonny's expression remained impassive, but Natalia could see the calculations happening behind his eyes, the rapid assessment of this new information and its implications for his world. The silence returned, heavier this time, laden with unspoken questions and possibilities. In that moment, as the rain continued to fall outside and the fire cast Dan